Do you ever notice that once you hit your 40s, your motivation fades, your fat sticks around a little bit longer, and your recovery is a lot slower than it was when you were in your 20s and 30s? For a lot of guys, this means they stop working out seriously. For other guys, they start taking shortcuts like taking TRT. But in reality, for most of these guys, it's lifestyle factors that are contributing to this drop in energy and enthusiasm for life. Improving hormonal health doesn't just come down to any one thing. Diet, lifestyle, sleep, environmental toxins, all these different things can influence your hormones. But exercise, and specifically the way in which you exercise, can also have a powerful impact on your hormonal profile. Heavy lifting doesn't just build bulky, or doesn't have to build bulk. In fact, heavy lifting with the right dietary context is one of the best ways to build dense, lean muscle. This dense, lean muscle helps you to ramp up your metabolism, and after a heavy lifting session, you're going to be burning calories for hours after the workout. It's basically the ultimate form of HIIT training. The decade of your 40s doesn't have to be one of decline. In fact, if you play it right, it could be the best decade yet. In fact, you could be performing better than guys in their 20s and 30s who are not spending time in the gym. I'm 41 now, and I feel better than I did when I was 25 years old. The guys that I work with largely say the same thing as well. More energy, more stamina, better sleep, more flexibility and agility. And many of them even get comments that they look younger. With the right approach, the right combination of your diet, strength, muscular endurance, bodybuilding, endurance, and power training, the decade of your 40s could be the best decade yet. Alright, so let's take a look at the key hormones that are influenced by powerlifting or heavy lifting. So first and foremost, we're going to look at the most popular one, which is testosterone. Now, contrary to what is popularly believed and what I used to believe, is testosterone does not actually create a chronic heavy lifting does not create a chronic elevation in your testosterone levels. Rather, it's more transient. So about 30 to 60 minutes after a heavy lifting session, your testosterone levels are going to be elevated. This helps you to create more of an anabolic environment so that when you eat nutrients afterwards, they're going to be more likely to be put towards the growth and repair of those muscles. Now, the other thing though, that while it isn't a chronic thing like taking anabolic steroids or taking TRT, this short-term spike can actually help you in the long term to be able to use your testosterone. It increases the sensitivity of your testosterone receptors to make it so that the testosterone that you do have circulating around in your body is used more effectively. We all know that it's not just your total testosterone that's important, but free testosterone. In other words, the testosterone that is not bound to albumin or other compounds within the body where it cannot essentially be used for muscle building purposes. So for the same thing here is that you can have testosterone in the body, but your sensitivity to it is what is more important than even the total amount of testosterone. Because let's say, for example, you had 1,000 nanograms per deciliter testosterone level, but your receptor sensitivity to that testosterone was not very high. It would be the same thing as with insulin resistance, where you have plenty of sugar floating around in the bloodstream, but because your receptors for insulin have become desensitized to insulin, the amount of insulin that your body naturally produces is not sufficient to get that sugar out of the bloodstream and put it into your cells. So the same thing can happen with your testosterone. And the heavy lifting can help to sensitize those receptors to make it so that the testosterone actually goes where it is supposed to go. The other downstream effect that heavy lifting can have in terms of improving your testosterone levels is on how it can help to reduce your cortisol levels in the long term, reduce visceral fat, and improve your quality of sleep. All these things together are going to help to improve your metabolic profile and by extension your hormonal profile. So when you were doing the heavy lifting at the beginning of the video, I said that it's going to have this epoch effect or this afterburn effect after the lifting, right? When you do intense exercise, sprinting, lifting heavy weights, etc., it's going to create this excess post-oxygen consumption or whatever, or the epoch effect, which is going to continue burning calories to help your body to repair, right? You go into an oxygen debt, you damage the muscle fibers, and you create a large nervous system stimulus when you're doing this heavy lifting, and all of these things increase your calorie requirements in the hours and even a day or two after this lifting session, which can, if used strategically with your diet, can help you to lose the body fat, lose the visceral fat. And we all know that having lower levels of body fat, as long as they're not, below like 7% for a guy, or in most guys, getting around 10% body fat is going to be the ideal place for optimal levels of testosterone. Because the more fat that you have in the body, if you're like 20% plus body fat, those fat cells are going to create more estrogen, and the estrogen is going to aromatase or convert testosterone, your free testosterone, into estrogen, which is then going to make it more likely that your food is going to be converted into more fat, which is going to create more estrogen. So this is another one of the benefits of lifting heavy, is that and testosterone, making it that when the food that you eat, because it's not just the calories, it's what your body ends up doing with the calories, right? Because we need calories for energy. But like in a young individual, like you get a guy in high school, he's just gone through puberty, or you get a guy in his 20s and 30s, he's got optimal high levels of testosterone, he can eat the same amount of food, but it's going more towards supporting his muscle mass, giving him more energy because of higher testosterone levels. And so by having this synergistic combination of not only the work that you're doing, the diet that you're eating, your other lifestyle habits that you're doing, can help to elevate those levels of testosterone so that the calories you eat go more towards growth and repair of muscle tissue, and also energy to get in there and do the workouts. Another benefit, non-hormonal benefit of lifting heavy is increases in muscle fiber size. So when you're doing bodybuilding style training, it tends to increase the fluid around the muscles, or the sarcoplasm, right? That's why they call it sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. But the actual fiber size, or the muscle fiber size themselves, doesn't actually increase that much. When you do heavy lifting though, those muscle fibers actually increase in size over the long term. And this is why it can actually help to improve your metabolism more so than other forms of exercise. If you're doing like going for a jog, or you're doing hundreds of push-ups or something, you're burning a lot of calories in the moment, but the downstream effects may actually cause it so that your body, your metabolism actually slows down to conserve more energy rather than making it so that you're leaner. So this is why it's important, not only your diet that you're doing, but also the way in which you exercise. Jogging is good, walking is good. In fact, walking should be done every single day. It's great for recovery from heavier lifting and stuff, but especially as you get older, if you're not doing the lifting, and if you're not progressively trying to grow stronger and lift heavier weights, then you're doing yourself a disservice in terms of your body composition, the way that you age, and your overall energy and quality of life the older that you get. Now, in some of my previous videos, I've talked about how high intensity exercise, like powerlifting or sprinting, can increase levels of cortisol. But this is not a bad thing. Cortisol often gets a bad rap for it's because many people in modern societies, especially if you have a high stress executive sort of position, for your work, or you're working as a police officer, first responder, a nurse, medical field, and things like that, oftentimes you're exposed to chronic stress. And when your stress is chronically high, then your insulin sensitivity can decrease, and when insulin sensitivity decreases, your likelihood of storing your calories that you eat, or your carbohydrates that you eat, as fat increases. But cortisol is actually the reason. It's actually it's not a defect in this situation. It's actually a feature of the system. Cortisol is a glucocorticoid hormone, right? So gluco meaning is being short for glucose, right? So the purpose of one of the purposes of cortisol is to mobilize stored energy to be used as fuel. That's why it's part of a fight or flight system. When you are either running from something or you're fighting something, you're going to need energy. And cortisol helps to take energy out of storage in your muscles, in your liver, dump it into your bloodstream so that you have extra energy to go and do whatever you're trying to do. And that's why when you do intense exercise, the cortisol levels rise to throw all that energy in there to better help you do your workouts. It's like getting an energy drink just simply by doing your exercise. Now, where it can become a problem is when it's chronically elevated. How does it become chronically elevated? Well, if you're not following that yin-yang principle of balance, right? Where you're balancing exertion, catabolic activity, with anabolic activity, which is rest and digest. When you spend too much time in the grind mode of the push, 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 in fact, back when I was in high school, I would think, man, if I do more lifting sessions, if I do more reps, if I do more sets, if I work out 6 days a week instead of 3 days a week, I will progress faster. I'll get stronger, I'll build bigger muscles. Well, that's likely not going to be the case unless you are taking anabolic steroids, which allow you to keep your hormones unnaturally high all the time, regardless of what you do. For those of us who don't have that, we need to respect our natural rhythms and cycles. So if you are doing multiple heavy lifting sessions per week, you are not paying attention to your recovery because you're also going out late on the weekends with your friends, or you're, let's say for example, you've had guys in their 40s aren't necessarily having young children, but if you do have a young child and it's keeping you up during the night, this is probably not the best time in your life to be trying to set PRs in the gym, to be doing marathon training or any of those other kind of things, because it's going to add to your overall stress bucket. So in the short term, cortisol is good. In the long term, or if chronically elevated and you're not managing it, it's going to have detrimental effects on your performance, your recovery, and your hormone levels. Your testosterone is going to go down, and it's kind of this vicious cycle, right? So you need to not only be disciplined about getting your workouts in, but also disciplined about your routine. And this is why the guys that I coach inside of a hybrid strength program, one of the first things that we do inside of the program is to look at your overall lifestyle, right? We don't just look at the workouts, we don't just look at the diet, but the first thing that we do is, what does your schedule look like? What does the schedule of the program look like? How do we mesh the two together to ensure that you are getting adequate recovery after the workouts, that you're able to get the nutrition in when you need it, so that you can get the best results from the work that you're doing in the gym. Because it's not just about working harder, it's about working in a way that actually is going to push you forward and actually get you the results you're getting, right? For example, you could be somebody like, let's say you're building the pyramids back in ancient Egypt, or you're building the Great Wall of China, right? When the guys were building the Great Wall of China, they would literally, some of them would die while they were building the wall, and they would just bury them inside of the wall, right? So these guys were working extremely hard, right? All day long, every day. The problem was they were under a lot of stress. Probably got the taskmaster, slave master pushing them, right? And they're not getting adequate nutrition to sustain what they're doing. They're not getting nutrition like an Olympic level athlete. They're not, managing their sleep and all these other things. The harder you're going to train, the more serious and more disciplined you need to be about your recovery. All right, so before I close out this video, 2 more hormones we want to talk about. These hormones are going to be stimulated to a greater extent with a bodybuilding style of training. Nonetheless, they are still stimulated with powerlifting, so I will add them in here as well because they do have some important benefits for your performance as a powerlifter. And those 2 hormones are growth hormone and IGF-1. So IGF-1 is the hormone that actually helps with muscle protein synthesis. So it stimulates muscle growth. When you do a hard workout, it stimulates, hey, let's create more muscle protein, right? Let's put more protein into these muscle fibers. Let's get them bigger. Let's grow them. Let's repair them, right? Human growth hormone also, because their IGF-1 and growth hormone are actually tied together. When growth hormone goes up, IGF-1 goes up as well. Now, growth hormone, it sounds like it helps you grow, right? But in fact, in this context, it's actually a catabolic hormone, the opposite, but because it allows you to burn fat more efficiently, right? Because when you don't have enough nutrition or enough carbohydrates, enough calories coming in, your body switches more to burning fat. And growth hormone is one of the hormones that helps you to make that switch to burning more fat for fuel. Why is this important for somebody who wants to lift heavy weights? Well, when you lift heavy weights, the primary fuel source that you're using when you're lifting heavy weights is carbohydrates, right? So you have a limited amount of carbohydrates stored in those muscles. And so when you are lifting, you are starting to deplete those down. When you, if you don't have, when you first start training, a higher percentage of the energy that you use for your lifting is going to come from carbohydrates. But when you become better conditioned, like I had talked about several months ago in some of my videos talking about the benefits of muscular endurance training, right? And how muscular endurance training can help you get stronger. One of the ways in which it does that is it helps you to burn fat more efficiently. So when growth hormone is stimulated, and it's helping you to burn fat more efficiently in the same way that muscular endurance training helps you burn fat more efficiently, it means that your submaximal sets, your warm-up sets, you're gonna be burning a higher percentage of fat for fuel as opposed to carbohydrates. Whereas a deconditioned or a beginner athlete is going to be burning a higher percentage of carbohydrates. They're going to be relying more on that. So this means that when you're burning more fat for fuel, you're not going to be depleting those carbs as fast, meaning that when you get up to your working weight, you're going to have more energy to do more heavy sets before you burn out and you run out of fuel. Alright guys, that's all I got for you today. Hopefully you found this insightful, beneficial. Maybe it motivated you as a guy over 40 who is maybe shying away a little bit from doing heavy lifting because you've heard that you should be doing more repetitions using lighter weight, focusing on more time under tension to protect your joints and to avoid injuries. So maybe shifted your perspective a little bit and maybe made you think, maybe I want to do a little bit more of the heavy lifting. Now, I do want to say, time under tension, focusing on proper form is very important, but it doesn't mean that you can't lift heavy. In fact, you can be lifting heavy, but if you are compromising your form to do so, that's where the problem comes, because then you're putting more of the stress into your joints, your tendons, your ligaments, and not into the muscles, which is where you're actually trying to overload, right? So from time to time, let's say, for example, you hit a PR, and then you're backing off from that, and then maybe you spend some time where you're not actually trying to add more weight. Let's say you kind of plateaued or something for a while. You could back it off a little bit, spend some time just doing pause stuff, right? You come all the way down to the bottom of a bench press or something, come to a complete stop, pause there for a second or two, press it back up. That second there where you're pausing, it's going to allow those muscles to get really stretched. Not only is it going to help you to build that strength out of the bottom position, it's going to be great for hypertrophy because in that stretch position is where you get the strongest signal for muscular growth. So, in summary, if you want to be the strongest, most energized version of yourself for as long as possible into the decade, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, then you want to be doing a combination of various different forms of exercise. You don't want to just stick yourself in one place and focus on just getting your absolute heaviest squat, absolute heaviest bench press, deadlift, etc., and then completely neglect any sort of endurance work, any sort of cardiovascular work. And by the same token, you don't want to only just be walking all the time or jogging all the time and completely forget about doing any sort of strength training. Push-ups are great. Body weight exercises are great, right? But at a certain point, you're going to get up to doing 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 push-ups in a row, and at that point, you're not building strength anymore. And so if you want the most efficient way to optimize your physical health in the decades of your 40s, 50s, and 60s, you need a combination of various different strength training styles and fitness disciplines to do that so that you're not burning out any one area and doing redundant levels of work in that area while neglecting the other ones, and so that you can kind of balance them all out and reap the rewards of all of them. That is in a nutshell, the essence of hybrid strength training that I teach in my online program, Hybrid Strength 101. For more details, you can private message me at aceproaaron@gmail.com. And until then, if you enjoy the content on this channel and you'd like to see more content related to workout design for building muscle, athletic performance, or diet for losing body fat, improving athletic performance, building muscle, etc., or how to work around injuries when you get them in the gym, or how to prevent getting those injuries to begin with, those are all topics that I cover right here on this channel. So if any of that interests you, go ahead and subscribe by clicking the button in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. I'll see you all later for more health and fitness information.